Rain lashed against the station platform as Beatrice James clutched her drenched shawl tighter around her shoulders, peering desperately through the downpour for any sign of the man who had promised to meet her. The wind howled mournfully, much like her spirits after standing alone for nearly 3 hours in the unrelenting deluge that had turned Dry Creek, Colorado, into anything but dry on this miserable October afternoon in 1875. Beatrice had traveled over 2,000 miles from Boston with nothing but a letter of agreement, a small trunk containing her modest possessions, and dreams of a new life in the West. Now, as the station slowly emptied and twilight approached, those dreams seemed to be dissolving in the puddles forming at her feet. "Madam," the station master approached her, concern etched across his weathered face. "Last train's gone. We're closing up for the night. You got somewhere to go." Beatrice swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "I'm waiting for someone, Mr. Jackson Blackwell. He was to meet me here." The station master's expression shifted to one of pity. "Blackwell's ranch is a fair piece from town. Could be the creeks flooded the lower road. Happens sometimes during these autumn storms." "I see," she whispered, though she didn't see at all. She only knew that she was alone, soaking wet, and nearly out of the money she'd carefully budgeted for this journey west. The station master was about to speak again when the sound of galloping hooves splashed through the puddles outside the station. A large figure on horseback emerged from the gloom, leading a second horse behind him. The rider dismounted in one fluid motion, revealing himself to be tall and broad-shouldered beneath a rain-slicked duster. He removed his hat as he approached, revealing a handsome face with concerned blue eyes and a strong jaw shadowed with stubble. "Miss James." He called, his deep voice carrying over the rain. Beatrice straightened, hope flaring within her chest. "Yes," the man crossed the platform in long strides, genuine regret evident in his expression. "I'm Jackson Brenner. I can't apologize enough for keeping you waiting." He gestured to the flooded valley beyond the station. Creek rose faster than anyone expected, had to ride the long way around. He looked at her, then really looked at her, taking in her drenched dress, her pale face, and the exhaustion in her eyes. His expression softened further. "You've waited long enough," he said gently, removing his duster and draping it over her shoulders. The warmth of it nearly brought tears to her eyes. "Let's get you home." The word home caught in Beatrice's ears. After months of correspondence, a week-long journey by train, and hours of waiting in the rain, could she really be heading towards something she could call home? As Jackson Brenner carefully helped her mount the second horse, she wasn't certain of anything except that this wasn't how she had imagined meeting her future husband. Jackson secured Beatrice's trunk to his saddle before mounting his own horse. "It's about an hour's ride to the ranch," he explained, guiding his horse alongside hers. "I know you must be tired, but the rain's easing up a bit." Indeed, the downpour had softened to a steady patter, though the darkening sky promised more to come. Beatrice adjusted herself in the saddle, grateful for the riding lessons her father had insisted upon in her youth. "I hope the journey wasn't too difficult," Jackson said as they rode out of town, his voice carrying over the rhythmic clop of hooves. "It was." "Educational," Beatrice replied diplomatically, thinking of the cramped train car, the dust, the unfamiliar faces, and the growing uncertainty that had accompanied each mile west. Jackson glanced at her, a small smile playing at his lips. "Educational. That's a kind way of putting it, I suspect." He adjusted his hat. "I should explain about today. I set out this morning with plenty of time to meet your train, but the storm hit harder than anyone expected. Willow Creek flooded the main road, and I had to backtrack 20 miles to find a safe crossing." "I understand," Beatrice said, though she was still trying to reconcile the man beside her with the person she had imagined from his letters. His correspondence had been forthright and practical, describing his ranch, the work required of a rancher's wife, and his desire for a companion who could help build a life in this rugged country. What his letters hadn't conveyed was the kindness in his eyes or the gentle way he spoke. "Your letters didn't mention how beautiful the landscape is," she observed, looking out at the rolling hills now shrouded in mist and rain. Jackson followed her gaze. "I suppose I've grown accustomed to it." In the morning, when the storm clears, you'll see the mountains to the west. That view never gets old, he paused. If you decide to stay, that is. Beatrice turned to him, surprised. If I decide to stay, Miss James, Beatrice, please. Beatrice, he corrected with a nod. Our arrangement was clear in the letters, but seeing you standing there in the rain. Well, it reminded me that you're taking a mighty big chance on a stranger. I won't hold you to anything until you've had time to see the ranch and decide if this life is truly what you want. His words were unexpected, and Beatrice found herself studying him more carefully. At 25, she had faced the realities of spinsterhood in Boston after her father's death left her with few prospects. Answering Jackson Brenner's advertisement had been an act of desperation as much as courage. She had expected many things from this arrangement, but consideration for her choice hadn't been among them. I appreciate that, she said finally, but I didn't travel all this way on a whim, Mr. Brenner. Jackson, he offered in return. Jackson, she repeated, testing the name. I made my decision before boarding that train. I'm not easily frightened by rain or hard work. A genuine smile spread across his face. I'm beginning to see that. They rode in companionable silence for a while, the rhythm of the horses' hooves creating a soothing cadence. The rain continued to fall, but less aggressively now, and Beatrice found herself relaxing slightly despite her sodden skirts and exhaustion. Tell me about your ranch, she prompted, eager to learn more about her new home. It's not grand, Jackson warned. 160 acres, mostly grazing land. I run about 200 head of cattle with the help of 2 ranch hands. The house is small but solid, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a front room. There's a good barn, a smokehouse, and a chicken coop. You built it yourself, he nodded. Every board. Came out here 6 years ago from Pennsylvania with my brother. We worked other men's land until we saved enough to claim our own. His voice softened. James, my brother, he died 3 winters back, pneumonia. I'm sorry, Beatrice said sincerely. Thank you, it was difficult. But the ranch is doing well now. I've been able to hire help, and the cattle fetch a good price in Denver. He glanced at her. Your letters mentioned your father passed recently. I'm sorry for your loss as well. Thank you, it's been a year now. He was a schoolteacher, very respected, but not wealthy. When he died, I found myself with few options. She straightened in the saddle, but I prefer to look forward, not back. Jackson nodded approvingly. A good philosophy for frontier life. The landscape began to change as they rode, transitioning from open prairie to more varied terrain with scattered stands of pine and aspen. They followed a winding trail that climbed gradually upward, and Beatrice caught glimpses of a valley spreading out below them whenever the rain thinned momentarily. Just over this ridge, Jackson said, after they had been riding for nearly an hour. They crested the hill, and even through the rain and gathering darkness, Beatrice could make out the outline of a ranch below. A solidly built house stood alongside a large barn, both with lights glowing in their windows. Several smaller outbuildings clustered nearby, and beyond stretched fenced pastures where dark shapes cattle, she presumed huddled together against the weather. Brenner Ranch, Jackson announced, a touch of pride in his voice. Not much to look at right now, but it's home. As they rode down toward the buildings, a figure emerged from the barn, lantern in hand. That's Miguel Ortiz, one of my ranch hands, Jackson explained. He and his brother Carlos help me run the place. Miguel hurried forward to meet them. Mr. Brenner, we were getting worried. His eyes widened as he noticed Beatrice. The bride, you found her. Miss James was waiting at the station, just as arranged, Jackson replied. Miguel, this is Miss Beatrice James. Welcome, Miss James, Miguel said, doffing his hat. Carlos has kept dinner warm, and Mrs. Ortiz, my mother, she has prepared the house for you. Beatrice nodded politely, though she was growing increasingly aware of her bedraggled appearance and the bone-deep chill that had settled into her body during the long wait and subsequent ride. Let's get you inside and warmed up, Jackson said, dismounting and coming to help her down from her horse. His hands were strong and steady as they spanned her waist, lifting her effortlessly to the ground. Her legs, stiff from the ride and the hours of standing, buckled slightly, and Jackson kept a supportive arm around her. Easy there, he murmured, Miguel, would you see to the horses and Miss James's trunk? I'll take her inside. Of course, Mr. Brenner. Jackson guided Beatrice toward the house, his arm still providing support. I apologize for the modest accommodations. It's not what you're likely used to in Boston. Boston had its charms, but also its limitations, she replied. I'm looking forward to building something new here. He gave her a curious glance as they reached the porch. You're not what I expected, Beatrice James. Is that disappointing? She asked, suddenly self-conscious. Not at all, he replied with a smile, just surprising. Inside, the house was simple but welcoming. A fire blazed in the stone hearth, filling the main room with warmth and the scent of pine. The furnishings were basic but sturdy, a wooden table with 4 chairs, a sofa covered in worn but clean fabric, and bookshelves built into the wall beside the fireplace. What caught Beatrice's attention, however, was the careful preparation evident throughout. Fresh flowers on the table, new curtains at the windows, and a colorful quilt draped over the sofa. An older woman with silver-streaked black hair and kind eyes emerged from what appeared to be the kitchen. Ah, you have arrived. I am Elena Ortiz. Welcome, welcome. Thank you, Beatrice said, suddenly overwhelmed by the warmth of the reception after the long, cold wait at the station. Elena clucked her tongue as she took in Beatrice's soaked appearance. You are drenched to the bone. Come, I have prepared a bath for you. The water may need heating again, but it will not take long. Jackson nodded encouragingly. Go on, get warmed up. I'll see about your trunk and some food. Elena led Beatrice to a small bedroom off the main room. A copper bathtub sat near a small fireplace and steam still rose from the water. I kept adding hot water, hoping you would arrive soon, the older woman explained. I will bring more. There are towels here and I laid out a nightdress and robe. They were Mr. Brenner's mother's. He thought they might fit until your things dry. Tears sprang unexpectedly to Beatrice's eyes at this simple kindness. Thank you, she managed. Elena patted her hand. It is a big thing to come so far to a new place, but you are welcome here, Miss James. Very welcome. When Elena left to get more hot water, Beatrice sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly hit by the enormity of what she had done. She had crossed a continent to marry a man she knew only through letters. She had left behind everything familiar for the promise of a new life in this wild country. The door opened again, and Elena returned with a steaming kettle, followed by a young man carrying Beatrice's trunk. This is my son, Carlos, Elena introduced him. Carlos, Miss James. Madam, Carlos said respectfully, setting down the trunk. Welcome to Brenner Ranch. After they left her alone, Beatrice gratefully sank into the bath, letting the hot water soothe her chilled body. As she washed away the grime of travel and the rain, she found herself reflecting on the day's events. Jackson Brenner was not exactly what she had pictured from his letters. He was taller, certainly more handsome, and there was a gentleness to him that his practical correspondence hadn't conveyed. His consideration in giving her time to decide if this life suited her spoke of a man of character. By the time she had dried off and dressed in the borrowed nightgown and robe, both a little large, but made of soft, good-quality fabric, Beatrice felt more like herself again. She combed her damp hair and braided it loosely, then took a deep breath before opening the bedroom door. Jackson sat at the table, which now held steaming bowls of stew, a loaf of bread, and a pot of coffee. He stood when she entered, his eyes widening slightly as he took in her transformation from the drenched, bedraggled woman at the station. You look rested, he said, pulling out a chair for her. A hot bath can work wonders, she replied, taking the offered seat. Thank you for the loan of these clothes. They were my mother's, he explained, sitting across from her. She passed 5 years ago, but Elena has kept her things well preserved. I'm sorry for your loss, Beatrice said sincerely. You've endured a great deal of grief. Jackson nodded solemnly. Life out here can be hard, but it's also rewarding in ways that are difficult to explain. He gestured to the stew. Please eat. Elena is an excellent cook, one of many reasons I'm fortunate to have the Ortiz family here. The stew was indeed delicious, rich with beef and vegetables, seasoned perfectly with herbs Beatrice didn't recognize. The bread was fresh and hearty, and the coffee strong and hot. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until she began eating. The Ortiz family seems very kind, she observed between bites. They've been with me since shortly after James died. Miguel and Carlos worked a neighboring ranch that went under after a bad winter. Elena was widowed the year before. We needed each other, I suppose. He broke off a piece of bread. They live in the bunkhouse near the barn, but Elena insists on cooking for all of us. Says her boys work better with proper feeding. She's probably right, Beatrice said with a small smile. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Jackson spoke again. I should explain the sleeping arrangements. He looked slightly uncomfortable. Until we're properly married, you'll have this bedroom to yourself. I'll take the small room off the kitchen. Beatrice felt a blush rising to her cheeks. That's very proper of you. I want to do things right, he said simply. The circuit preacher comes through every third Sunday. He'll be here in 9 days, but as I said, that's only if you decide to stay. And if I don't, she asked, curious about what contingency he had planned. Then I'll take you to Denver myself and see you safely on a train east with enough money for your journey home. His expression was earnest. I meant what I said, Beatrice. I won't hold you to this if it's not what you want. She studied him across the table, this man who had advertised for a bride with such practical considerations, but now showed such unexpected consideration for her feelings. You're a good man, Jackson Brenner. Your letters didn't fully convey that. It was his turn to look embarrassed. I'm not much for flowery words, just tried to be honest about what life here would be like. Honesty is worth more than poetry, she said, especially when building a life together. His eyes met hers, and something passed between them, not quite understanding yet, but the possibility of it. The beginning of something that might, with time and care, grow into more. The moment was interrupted by a tremendous crash of thunder that shook the windows. Both of them startled, then laughed at their mutual reaction. Sounds like we're in for a stormy night, Jackson observed. I've had enough of rain for one day, Beatrice said with feeling. Then I'm doubly sorry for leaving you waiting so long at that station. You've made up for it, she assured him, gesturing to the warm house, the good food, and the dry clothes. After dinner, Jackson showed her more of the house, the kitchen with its cast iron stove and well-stocked pantry, the small study with bookshelves filled with volumes that surprised her with their variety, and the details of the bedroom that would be hers, at least temporarily. I built most of the furniture, he explained as she admired the bedroom's dresser with its simple but elegant carvings. Winter evenings get long out here. Woodworking passes the time. You're talented, she said, genuinely impressed. Just patient, he demurred. Elena put fresh linens on the bed this morning. There's extra blankets in the chest if you get cold. The domesticity of the moment struck Beatrice, suddenly discussing bedroom arrangements with this man who was still largely a stranger but might soon be her husband. The reality of her situation washed over her anew. Jackson must have noticed her expression. It's a lot to take in, he said gently. Get some rest, Beatrice. Things often look clearer in the morning. She nodded gratefully. Good night, Jackson, and thank you again for coming to find me. I'll always come for you, he said with such simple sincerity that it caught at her heart. Then, seeming embarrassed by his own words, he added quickly, sleep well, and left her alone with her thoughts. As Beatrice prepared for bed, she could hear the rain continuing to fall outside, but it no longer seemed threatening. Instead, it created a soothing backdrop as she slipped between the clean sheets. Despite her exhaustion, sleep didn't come immediately. Her mind was too full of the day's events, the journey that had brought her here, and the man whose home she now shared. Jackson Brenner was a puzzle, practical yet kind, strong yet gentle, straightforward yet clearly capable of deeper feelings. Their arrangement had been a business-like one, born of mutual need. He required a wife to help maintain his home and build his ranch. She needed security, and a fresh start after her father's death left her nearly destitute. Marriage based on practicality rather than romance was common enough. Yet something in the way he had looked at her, in his insistence that she have time to decide if this life suited her, suggested the possibility of more. In Boston, with her options dwindling, that more hadn't seemed important. Now, having met him, she found herself hoping for it. Eventually, lulled by the rain and exhausted from her journey, Beatrice drifted into a deep sleep. She awoke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, she was disoriented, the unfamiliar room confusing her sleep-addled mind. Then the events of the previous day rushed back, and she sat up, taking in her surroundings in the clear light of morning. The room was small but thoughtfully arranged, with the dresser she had admired last night, a small writing desk beneath the window, and a peg rail for hanging clothes. Fresh wildflowers stood in a simple pottery vase on the windowsill, their bright colors cheerful against the whitewashed walls. Beatrice rose and found that Alina had laid out her now dried traveling dress, freshly pressed. Her trunk sat at the foot of the bed, still closed. She dressed quickly, then took a moment to unpack a few essentials: her hairbrush, a small mirror, and a framed daguerreotype of her parents that she placed carefully on the dresser. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Jackson at the table, studying what appeared to be a ledger. He looked up at her entrance and smiled, rising to his feet. "Good morning," he greeted her. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in weeks," she admitted. "What time is it?" "Just past 8. You needed the rest." She looked out the window, startled. "I've never slept so late." "I'm usually up before dawn." "You had a long journey," he said reasonably. "Besides, there's no rush today. I thought you might like to see the ranch, get your bearings." "I'd like that very much," she replied, grateful for his understanding. Alina left breakfast keeping warm in the oven. "She's gone to help Miguel's wife with their new baby. Coffee's fresh, though." As they ate breakfast together, Beatrice found herself studying Jackson in the morning light. He was handsome in a rugged way, with sun-browned skin and laugh lines at the corners of his eyes. His hands were strong and calloused from work, yet he handled his coffee cup with surprising delicacy. "You're staring," he observed without looking up from his plate. Beatrice felt her cheeks warm. "I'm sorry, it's just strange, isn't it? To have exchanged letters for months and now to be sitting across from each other." He looked up then, a half-smile playing at his lips. "Strange, yes, but not unpleasant." "No," she agreed softly, "not unpleasant at all." After breakfast, Jackson showed her around the ranch. In the clear light of morning, Beatrice could see what had been obscured by rain and darkness the night before. The ranch nestled in a valley with gently rolling hills to the east and mountains rising majestically to the west. A creek, not the one that had flooded, Jackson explained, but a smaller tributary wound through the property, providing water for the cattle and irrigating the small kitchen garden near the house. The barn was larger than she had expected, housing 6 horses, a milk cow, and storage for hay and equipment. A chicken coop stood nearby, where 24 hens scratched in a fenced yard. Beyond these immediate structures stretched fenced pastures where cattle grazed contentedly under the watchful eyes of Carlos, and a dog that Jackson introduced as Blue. "He's the best cattle dog in the territory," Jackson said with obvious pride as the border collie trotted over to greet them. "Worth any 3 cowboys." Blue sniffed curiously at Beatrice's skirts before allowing her to pet his head. "He's beautiful," she said, scratching behind the dog's ears. "And he knows it," Jackson laughed. "Smartest creature on 4 legs and twice as vain as any human." They walked further, and Jackson pointed out the boundaries of his property, explaining his plans for expansion and improvement. His passion for the land was evident in every word, and Beatrice found herself increasingly interested in his vision. "What do you think so far?" he asked as they paused on a hilltop overlooking the ranch. "It's beautiful," she answered honestly. "Different from anything I've known, but beautiful and intimidating," he guessed. Beatrice considered the question. "Yes," she admitted, "but also exciting. There's something compelling about building something meaningful, even if it's difficult." Jackson nodded, looking pleased with her answer. "That's it exactly. Every fence post, every new calf, every successful harvest, they all mean something because we worked for them." "We." She echoed, catching the word. "Figure of speech," he said quickly, though his eyes held hers a moment longer than necessary. "But I hope it might be we someday, if you decide to stay." The question hung between them, unspoken but present. Would she stay? Would she choose this life, this man, this future? "I should be honest with you," Beatrice said slowly. "I came west because I had few options left in Boston. My father's death left me nearly penniless, and the teaching position I held was given to someone else when the school came under new management. Jackson listened attentively, his expression serious. Your advertisement seemed like providence, she continued. A chance for security, for a new beginning. I answered it out of practicality, not romantic notions. I understand, he said. My reasons were practical too. Running a ranch requires a partnership. I need someone to help with the household while I tend the land and cattle. Someone who could be a true helpmate. He paused. But I always hoped for more than just a business arrangement. My parents had a love match, though they started with little. I saw how they worked together, how they faced hardships side by side. That's what I want. You never mentioned that in your letters, Beatrice pointed out. Jackson looked slightly embarrassed. Didn't seem proper to speak of such things to a lady I hadn't met. Besides, I've never been good with words. I'm better with actions. Like coming to find me in the rain, she suggested softly. Yes, like that. His eyes met hers again, and this time there was something in them that made her heart beat faster. I can promise you security, Beatrice. A home, food on the table, protection, but I hope we might find more than that together given time. The sincerity in his voice moved her deeply. I hope for that too, she admitted, though I can't promise my heart any more than you can. These things need time to grow. Then we'll give them time, he said simply, starting with these 9 days before the preacher comes. They continued their tour of the ranch, the conversation turning to more practical matters. Jackson showed her the smokehouse where meat was preserved, the root cellar dug into a hillside where vegetables would be stored for winter, and the small orchard of young apple trees he had planted 2 years before. They should bear fruit next year, he explained as they walked among the slender trees. Just a small crop at first, but in time we'll have enough for cider and preserves. You think far ahead, Beatrice observed. Have to out here. Winter comes hard and fast. You're always preparing for the next season, the next year, he glanced at her. Speaking of which, we should talk about the wedding, if you're still inclined toward it. I am, she said, surprising herself with how certain she felt, unless you've changed your mind. Not at all, he assured her quickly. Just wanted to be sure you hadn't. They discussed the simple ceremony that would take place when the circuit preacher arrived. There would be no fancy dress or elaborate celebration, just vows exchanged in the presence of the Ortiz family and a few neighboring ranchers. It won't be like weddings back east, Jackson said apologetically. I don't need finery or crowds, Beatrice told him, just honesty between us. He nodded, looking relieved. There is one tradition I'd like to honor, though, my mother's wedding ring. He reached into his pocket and produced a simple gold band. If you're willing to wear it. Beatrice stared at the ring, touched by the gesture. Are you sure? It's a family heirloom. I've been saving it for my wife, he said simply. That was always the plan. Then I would be honored, she replied softly. He didn't place it on her finger that would wait for the ceremony, but returned it carefully to his pocket with a promise for the future. As they walked back toward the house, Miguel rode up to them, his expression urgent. Mr. Brenner, Johnson's fence is down again and his yearlings are mixing with our herd in the north pasture. Jackson frowned. That's the 3rd time this month I'll ride up there with you. He turned to Beatrice. I'm sorry, I need to handle this. Johnson's new to ranching and still learning the importance of proper fencing. Of course, she assured him. I have unpacking to do anyway. I'll be back by supper, he promised before striding toward the barn with Miguel. Left to her own devices, Beatrice returned to the house and set about unpacking her trunk. Her possessions were few but carefully chosen practical dresses, undergarments, a few books, her mother's silver hairbrush, and the small collection of letters Jackson had sent over the months of their correspondence. She reread them now with fresh eyes, understanding more of the man behind the practical words. His descriptions of the ranch the work required, the weather patterns all had been accurate but understated. What his letters hadn't conveyed was his pride in his accomplishments, his kindness, or the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. Eleanor returned mid-afternoon with a basket of fresh eggs and vegetables from her daughter-in-law's garden. Ah, Miss James, you are settling in. Yes, thank you, Beatrice replied warmly. And please call me Beatrice. Beatrice, Eleanor repeated with a smile. A beautiful name. Have you seen the ranch? What do you think of our little corner of Colorado? It's lovely, Beatrice said sincerely. Different from Boston in every way, but lovely. Alina nodded approvingly. And Mr. Brenner, he is treating you well, very well, Beatrice assured her. He's been most considerate. He is a good man, Alina said firmly. Works hard, treats everyone fairly, he will make a good husband. I believe he will, Beatrice agreed, finding that she meant it. Good, now I will teach you to make tortillas. Every ranch wife should know how. Alina bustled to the kitchen and Beatrice followed, eager to learn. The afternoon passed pleasantly as Alina taught her not only to make tortillas, but also shared recipes for beans, stews, and other staples of ranch cooking. She explained which wild plants could be gathered for seasonings and medicines, and which local vegetables grew best in the kitchen garden. My mother-in-law taught me these things when I married, Alina explained as she demonstrated how to knead the dough properly. Now I teach you. This is women's wisdom, passed down. Beatrice was touched by the acceptance implicit in Alina's words. She wasn't just a stranger anymore, but someone being welcomed into a tradition, a community. By the time Jackson returned, dusty and tired from mending fences and sorting cattle, Beatrice and Alina had prepared a hearty meal of beef stew, fresh tortillas, and apple cobbler. Something smells wonderful, he declared as he washed up at the basin on the porch. Beatrice helped cook, Alina informed him with a proud smile. She learns quickly. Jackson looked surprised but pleased. Is that so, a woman of many talents? Dinner was a lively affair, with Miguel and Carlos joining them. The brothers shared amusing stories of cattle drives and local characters, while Alina kept everyone's plates full. Jackson spoke little but smiled often, especially when watching Beatrice interact with the others. After the meal, Alina and her sons returned to their own quarters, leaving Jackson and Beatrice alone in the quiet house. They sat before the fire, the crackling flames the only sound as they sipped coffee. Thank you for today, Beatrice said finally, breaking the comfortable silence. For showing me the ranch, for being so patient. It's your home too, he replied, or it will be if you decide to stay. She studied him in the firelight, this man who continued to surprise her with his consideration. Why do you keep saying that? Do you doubt I'll stay? Jackson considered her question carefully. Not doubt exactly, but I know this life isn't easy. It's beautiful, yes, but also hard. Winters are long and harsh. Summers are dry and hot. There's always work to be done, always something that needs fixing or tending. He set down his coffee cup. I wouldn't blame you for choosing something easier. I don't want easy, Beatrice said firmly. I want meaningful, and what I've seen today, the ranch you've built, the community you've fostered with the Ortiz family, it matters. It's real. It is, he agreed, a slow smile spreading across his face. Very real. They talked late into the evening, sharing more of their histories, their hopes, their ideas for the ranch's future. When at last they bid each other good night, something had shifted between them, a deeper understanding, the first tentative roots of what might grow into something more than a practical arrangement. The next 8 days passed in a similar fashion, with Beatrice learning more about ranch life while Jackson tended to his daily responsibilities. She helped Alina with cooking and household tasks, collected eggs from the henhouse, and even learned to milk the cow under Carlos's patient instruction. On the third day, Jackson took her riding to see more distant parts of the ranch. They picnicked beside the creek, talking easily about books they had both read and places they hoped to visit someday. When their hands touched accidentally as they both reached for the same apple, neither pulled away immediately, and the warmth of that brief contact lingered even after they continued their ride. On the 5th day, rain threatened again, and they spent the afternoon in the barn, where Jackson showed her how to mend harnesses and explained the various tools hanging on the walls. Their shoulders brushed as they worked side by side, and Beatrice found herself increasingly aware of his presence, his scent, the way his hands moved confidently over leather and metal. On the 7th day, a neighbor's child fell ill, and Beatrice accompanied Alina to help tend the sick girl. Her knowledge of basic nursing skills learned during her father's final illness proved valuable, and by evening the child's fever had broken. Jackson's pride in her was evident when she recounted the day's events, and his hand rested briefly on hers as he thanked her for her help. "You're becoming part of the community already," he observed as they walked back from visiting the recovering child the next day. "Mrs. Peterson was singing your praises to everyone who would listen." "I only did what anyone would do," Beatrice demurred. "Not everyone would have known how to bring down a fever so effectively or keep a frightened child calm through the worst of it," he countered. "You have gifts, Beatrice James. This place needs them." His words warmed her more than she cared to admit. The sense of belonging, of being needed and valued, was something she had missed desperately since her father's death. On the 9th day, the day the preacher was due to arrive, Beatrice woke early, her stomach fluttering with nerves. Today, she would make her decision final, binding herself to this man and this place for a lifetime. She dressed carefully in her best gown, a deep blue wool that brought out the color of her eyes. Elena had helped her press it the night before and had given her a small bouquet of late-blooming wildflowers tied with a ribbon. "Something pretty for a bride," the older woman had said with a warm smile. Now, as Beatrice pinned up her hair and regarded her reflection in the small mirror, she searched her heart for any doubts. She found none. In 9 days, she had seen enough of Jackson Brenner and the life he offered to know that, practical arrangement or not, this was where she wanted to be. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. "Beatrice, may I speak with you?" Jackson's voice was uncharacteristically hesitant. She opened the door to find him dressed in his Sunday best, a clean shirt, pressed trousers, and a vest she hadn't seen before. His hair was neatly combed and he had trimmed his beard. He looked handsome and nervous. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes taking in her appearance. "Thank you," she replied, suddenly shy. "You look very handsome yourself." He cleared his throat. "I wanted to speak with you before the preacher arrives, to make sure." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "To make sure you're certain about this, about marrying me." Beatrice stepped closer to him. "I am certain, Jackson, are you?" "More certain than I've ever been about anything," he said with such sincerity that it took her breath away. "But not for the reasons I thought when I first wrote that advertisement, not just because I need a helpmate or because it's practical." "Why then?" she asked softly, her heart quickening. "Because in 9 days, you've brought more life to this ranch than it's seen in years. Because you're kind and strong and smarter than I gave you credit for in those early letters. Because," he took a deep breath, "because I think I could fall in love with you, Beatrice James." "I think I already am." The words hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Beatrice felt tears prick at her eyes, not from sadness but from a sudden, overwhelming hope. "I think I could fall in love with you too, Jackson Brenner," she whispered. "I think that's already happening as well." His smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down and pressed his lips gently to hers. The kiss was brief but tender, a promise of things to come. "I'll wait for you downstairs," he said when they parted. "The preacher should be here within the hour." Alone again, Beatrice touched her fingers to her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. This wasn't how she had imagined her life unfolding when she boarded that train in Boston. But somehow it felt right, as if all the hardships and uncertainties had led her exactly where she was meant to be. The wedding ceremony was simple, but meaningful. The preacher, a kind-faced man named Reverend Wilson, performed the service in the Brenner's front room with the Ortiz family and a few neighboring ranchers as witnesses. Jackson's voice was steady as he recited his vows, and when he placed his mother's ring on Beatrice's finger, his hand trembled only slightly. "By the power vested in me," Reverend Wilson pronounced, "I now declare you husband and wife. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Jackson kissed her then, a proper kiss that still managed to convey deeper feelings than propriety might allow. There was applause from their small audience, and then Elena was bustling forward with congratulations, followed by the others. The celebration that followed was modest but joyful. Elena had prepared a feast, and neighbors had brought additional dishes and small gifts. There was music from Carlos's fiddle and Miguel's guitar, and even dancing in the yard as the afternoon wore on. Throughout it all, Jackson remained close to Beatrice, his hand often finding hers, his eyes seeking her out across the gathering. Each look, each touch reaffirmed the connection growing between them, something far beyond their initial practical arrangement. As twilight fell, the guests began to depart, offering final congratulations and good wishes. Soon only the Ortiz family remained, and they too tactfully withdrew to their quarters after helping to clean up the remnants of the celebration. And then Beatrice and Jackson were alone, husband and wife in fact as well as in name. "Mrs. Brenner," Jackson said softly, testing the name. "It has a nice sound to it," she replied with a smile. He took her hands in his. "I meant what I said this morning. I'm falling in love with you, Beatrice." "I know it's fast, perhaps foolish, not foolish," she interrupted gently. "Unexpected, yes, but not foolish, I feel it too." Relief and joy mingled in his expression. "I want to do right by you, to be a good husband, and I want to be a good wife," she assured him. "We'll learn together." That night, as they came together as husband and wife for the first time, there was tenderness and discovery, patience and passion. Jackson was gentle, attentive to her inexperience, and Beatrice found herself responding with a depth of feeling that surprised them both. What might have been merely a duty became instead a profound connection, bodies and hearts joining in the darkness. Afterward, as they lay together in the quiet of their bedroom, Jackson's arms around her and her head pillowed on his chest, Beatrice marveled at the journey that had brought her here. From a rain-soaked station platform to this moment of contentment, it seemed both improbable and inevitable. "What are you thinking?" Jackson asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "That I'm glad I waited in the rain," she answered truthfully. "That every moment of discomfort was worth it to end up here." He tightened his arms around her. "I'll spend a lifetime making up for those hours you waited," he promised. "You already have," she assured him, pressing a kiss to his chest, right above his heart. As autumn deepened into winter, Beatrice and Jackson settled into the rhythms of married life on the ranch. The work was hard, just as he had warned, but they faced it together. Beatrice took over the household management, working alongside Alina until the older woman deemed her capable enough to handle things on her own. She learned to preserve meat in the smokehouse, to make soap and candles, to mend clothing, and to tend the animals when Jackson and the ranch hands were occupied elsewhere. Jackson, true to his word, continued to court her even after their wedding. He brought her wildflowers when he found them on the range, carved small wooden trinkets during the long winter evenings, and always made time to talk with her at the end of each day, no matter how exhausted he might be. Their physical relationship deepened alongside their emotional one, growing more passionate and intimate as they learned each other's bodies and desires. What had begun as attraction blossomed into genuine love, expressed in both words and actions. Winter brought its challenges: freezing temperatures, snowstorms that isolated the ranch for days at a time, and the constant work of keeping humans and animals alive through the harsh weather. But it also brought cozy evenings by the fire, the luxury of time to read and talk, and the deep satisfaction of facing difficulties together. Spring arrived with a burst of green across the valley, calving season keeping everyone busy from dawn till dusk. Beatrice proved herself invaluable during this time, assisting with difficult births and caring for orphaned calves that needed bottle feeding. "You're a natural at this," Jackson told her one evening as they walked back from the barn where she had been tending a sickly calf. "Some people never get the hang of ranch life, but you've taken to it like you were born to it." "I love it," she admitted. "It's harder than anything I've ever done, but also more rewarding." He squeezed her hand. "I thank God every day for bringing you here." "Even though I was a soaking wet, bedraggled mess when you found me," she teased. "Especially then," he laughed. "You were magnificent standing there in the rain, chin up, refusing to be beaten by weather or circumstances." "I was mostly just cold and miserable," she confessed. "No," he insisted, turning to face her. "You were brave. You still are leaving everything familiar to come to this wild place, working alongside us all without complaint, facing whatever challenges arise with that same determination I saw that first day." Beatrice was touched by his perception. "I never thought of it that way." "Well, I do, every day." He pulled her close, kissing her with a passion that still took her breath away. I love you, Beatrice Brenner, more than I ever thought possible. And I love you, Jackson Brenner, she replied, her heart full, more than I ever dreamed. As they walked hand in hand back to the house, they now shared fully as partners. Beatrice reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a rain-soaked platform where she had waited, alone and uncertain, to this life of purpose and love, it had been worth every step. The mail-order bride had indeed waited long enough. But what she had found at the end of that wait was beyond anything she could have hoped for. Not just security or practicality, but a home, a partnership, and a love that would grow stronger with each passing season in this wild, beautiful land they both now called home. 1 year after their wedding, as autumn painted the aspen trees gold once more, Beatrice and Jackson stood on the hilltop overlooking their ranch. Much had changed in 12 months. New fencing extended their grazing land, the barn had been expanded, and a nursery had been added to their bedroom in anticipation of the child Beatrice now carried. Hard to believe it's been a year, Jackson said, his arm around her waist, hand resting protectively on the small swell of her stomach. The best year of my life, Beatrice replied, leaning into his embrace, even with all the work, the blizzards, that drought in July. Especially with all of that, she said firmly, because we faced it together. He turned her gently in his arms so he could look into her eyes. Do you ever regret it, coming west, marrying a rancher you knew only through letters? Beatrice reached up to touch his face, tracing the laugh lines that had deepened over the past year. Never, not for a single moment. Even when you were waiting in the rain, he asked with a small smile. Even then, she assured him, because you were worth waiting for, Jackson Brenner. You've always been worth waiting for. As the sun began to set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across their land, Jackson kissed her with all the love that had grown between them over the past year, a love born from practical beginnings, but nurtured into something extraordinary through shared work. Challenges overcome together, and the daily choice to build a life of meaning in this wild, beautiful place they now called home. The mail-order bride had waited long enough that rainy day at the station. But what she had found at the end of that wait was a love story still being written, day by day, season by season, for all the years to come.